Thanks for inviting me down, Jeff, and I'm excited to talk to you a little bit about the work we did on Table Rock Lake. You've heard a lot about habitat from when the lake is empty and what you can do. We took an approach from the top of the water, so I'm going to show you some of the techniques we used, and hopefully maybe you can take something back with you and perform some of this on your own lakes. The Table Rock Lake National Fish Habitat Initiative started in 2007. Really the idea, the concept started far before that. It's a cooperative project. It was MDC, the Missouri Department of Conservation, Arkansas Game and Fish Commission that owns about 1,000 acres of the lake. Bass Pro Shops chipped in a pretty substantial portion of funding, and then National Fish and Wildlife Foundation matched that funding. So Arkansas Game and Fish and MDC funding were the other third. So it was 1/3 for each of those partners. About $4 million over 6 years is what we put towards this, and we were able to get a lot of stuff done. The focus area is Table Rock Lake is down in southwest Missouri. It's part of the White River. Where that's focused is not entirely accurate. I should include all of the watershed going south out of Table Rock Lake. That's all in Arkansas. And I'm going to talk mostly about what Missouri did. The Arkansas guys took a good chunk of this money and worked in the watershed on a lot of stream bank projects. But I don't have that information with me, so I'll just tell you what MDC did. So it's part of the White River. Beaver Lake is above it, and then directly below it is Bull Shoals Lake. Table Rock Lake, the dam was completed in 1959. It's 43,000 acres. Like I said, there's about 1,000 of those acres that are in Arkansas. The rest of it lies in Missouri. 745 miles of shoreline. So it was quite a daunting task to think about, try to improve fish habitat in something this large. We had one biologist that we hired to do this work, and he had 2 hourly employees, and then there was me. Over 6 years, we got a pretty good amount done. 4 major drainages that feed it, and then those drainages typically hold higher densities of crappie, largemouth bass, whereas the main sections of the lake are very clear, very rocky. You see more smallmouth bass, less crappie, more goggle eye. So the fish assemblage, what you see here, really a popular bass fishing destination, as I'm sure you know. Largemouth, smallmouth, and spotted bass. We manage for walleye and paddlefish through stocking, annual stocking efforts, but the rest of the lake is self-sustaining. So we had 5 objectives when we started this project. First, of course, to improve the fish habitat. As I showed you, it was impounded in 1959, so the lake's 50 years old. A lot of the standing timber that was left in the lake was starting to deteriorate. We wanted to take a proactive approach. The fish population is fantastic in the lake right now, and we wanted to keep it that way the best we could, other than letting that population crash as a result of the habitat loss. We decided to go in with this funding ahead of time. So we worked to improve the fish habitat in the lake. We also wanted to take it to a watershed scale and say, okay, what can we do with some of this funding? We don't just want to dump brush and dump habitat structures, but as you've heard all morning, you have to work in these watersheds. You have to try to lock up those sediment, those nutrients, in order to make a big difference. So I'll tell you a little bit about each of these objectives as we go along. Third, we wanted to improve water quality and habitat within Lake Taneycomo, which is the tailwater of Table Rock Lake. Then we wanted to add a monitoring component to achieve our 5th objective, because this was designed to be a pilot project in a broad national scale. So we wanted to do this project, put the reports out, and give to folks just like you. Here's what we did. Take these methods, use them. So that was one of our main objectives, was to create a pilot. And so we monitored the effectiveness and longevity of some of the structures. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So for improving fish habitat, in 6 years, we installed 2,024 fish habitat structures around the lake. These were composed primarily of brush, about 1,800 brush structures, but we also used, the barge Ben was referencing in the top right, out of Iowa, to put in 114 rock structures, 76 stump fields, some combinations of those, and then we utilized some low water to do some rock fence construction. We do have a GIS map that's located on our website, and we do mark I guess about 100 of those structures are marked with shoreline signs like you see down there. This is our website, just a screenshot of what our website looks like and the address there. Pretty much all that green is Table Rock Lake, so those are all structures. It doesn't have a good lake outline, but anglers can go to this map. They can download these coordinates directly to their GPS units. They can print printable PDF maps that show where these structures are. And then we also have developed, not through this project, but our agency has developed a smartphone app as well that uses your phone's GPS to show you where you are on the lake. And it bounces off of our network server, and it shows you, you can see on the top right, all those blue squares are fish habitat structures. The blue dot down on the bottom right is my office right below the dam there, so that's where I was sitting when I did this on my phone. Yes, it's really neat. I mean, I've only got a small Garmin GPS when I go out fishing, so it only holds about 500 points. When you've got 2,000 on the lake, go to an area of the lake and forget to load them onto your GPS. As long as you get cell service, you can usually find those with your depth finders. So it's pretty slick. Anglers have really enjoyed using this. Just a few pictures of our habitat barge, how we dump our brush. It's built by Tracker Marine, 29 foot long, has a lift bed on the front that's powered by a generator, 7,500 pound capacity on that. We don't lift a lot of rocks and stumps on it. I'd never seen that Bubba hopper you had, Ben. That's pretty awesome. I have to talk to you more about that because I really like that idea putting on the front of this. But we were able to move some really large trees, get some really nice brush piles, and we typically 2 to 3 loads like you see on these pictures per pile. So easy for anglers without GPS to find. You know, there's nothing worse than being out there and trying to find a brush pile and it not being much bigger than about right here. You drive and drive and drive. So we tried to make them big and so they'd hold more fish as well. The rock barge, a few pictures of what it can do. This thing can move about 15 tons of material per load. You can see these stumps and the size and scale of these stumps on the bottom left corner. It's just phenomenal the amount of material it can move, but it only goes about 2 miles an hour. So hence the cost of each structure equates out to a pretty substantial portion of money because they charge a pretty good amount to bring it down, but it's the only one of its kind, and it can do a lot of stuff that typical barges can't. So, and these structures also, you know, you think about wood and how long it's going to last. These rocks and big stumps are going to be there for the life of the reservoir, you know. So that's something else to consider when you're factoring in cost. And then we worked a little bit on the shoreline. This is what our shoreline looks like. Everything is rock. In the backs of some of the creeks, we do have a little silt that's accumulated over time, but some of that's just uniform gravel substrate. We had some low water one year, it's about 10 foot low in these pictures. So how can we utilize some of that stuff? So we barged, and you kind of see, built a barge to move the bobcat around, and we could move to different sections of the shoreline and build these little fish huts and little shoreline structures. Some before and after pictures just right after they were completed. So taking all of this uniform substrate and piling it into something that fish could use, and then as a result of that also exposing all that small pea gravel underneath of it. So hopefully in an effort to improve spawning in those areas as well. But when the water's up over these in the spring, anglers really like these. And this idea came about from an angler, actually a couple of anglers, but ones that had fished the lake since it had been built. I don't know if you know the name Charlie Campbell, but he's fished Table Rock his whole, since it's been built. And he said some of the old existing fences that were there before the lake filled were some of the best fish attractors we had on there. So we thought, well, we can try to recreate some of that with the funding we have. And then briefly I want to talk about, we couldn't have done this on our own with our own equipment. The dollar amount really helped us to build these structures big. We used a lot of contract labor. We hired a contractor out of Shell Knob, Missouri, which is on the opposite side of the lake from Branson. And they would go in, we'd find developers, folks that were clearing land in the area, and we would utilize the stumps and the trees that they'd clear off, haul those to the lake, and then they would load us up on the shoreline with those materials. So really a win-win for everybody, and really allowed us to move a lot of structure and put in a lot of brush piles in a short amount of time. 6 years isn't that long with one boat and one guy and 2 hourly employees. It was great. We just pull right up to the shore, they load us up, we pull off the shore and go dump it, and it kind of makes you lazy after a while. You get pretty spoiled, but it worked really well to get a lot in. Finally, kind of the watershed component, improving the water quality within the lake. We wanted to improve stream and riparian habitats, as well as reduce the nutrient inputs coming in. This is just the Missouri portion of the watershed, and that's the James River leading up to the north. It goes all the way up past Springfield, Missouri. The Arkansas watershed is probably about 3 times this big. We completed 8 projects in the watershed from 2007 to 2013. We worked with landowners that had failing, eroding stream banks. like you've seen a lot of this morning. We went in there with some cost share funding. We were able to provide up to 95% cost share to these landowners to complete these projects. And you can see just 2008, 10, and 11, what's happened to those shorelines after we've stabilized them. So stabilized about 3,000 linear feet of shoreline, reducing the amount of sediment coming into the lake, and those landowners are very, very appreciative. The other neat thing we did, we've got some really good water quality groups down at Table Rock Lake. Table Rock Lake Water Quality and the James River Basin Partnership are the two main ones we worked with. We kind of piggybacked onto a program that the James River Basin Partnership was doing called a Pump a Million campaign. What they were doing was providing cost share assistance to landowners that lived within the watershed of Table Rock Lake to get their septic tanks pumped. Very few people that live around the lake know that septics require maintenance. Every 3 to 5 years they should be pumped out. Well, some of these had never been pumped out. There was even some failing. So we came in with some of our grant money, gave it to them, and they administered this program, provided $50 incentive to landowners to get their septic tank pumped out, and then provided them a packet of educational materials telling them how to maintain their systems. So we had over 2,000 participants in that, and that project's actually still going, so that's a good thing, equating out to about 2 million gallons of effluent we removed from the watershed. And the numbers they shot me, they're guessing, and I'm not exactly sure where they got them, but kind of estimating removal of about 550 pounds of nitrogen as well. And that's a year, so it's been a really positive thing, and it's no secret when the water's low to see where some of these nutrients are coming into the lake. It's not all from the watershed, but you see just a green slime running down the rock bluff, and you look up and there's a house up there, so you know what's going on. So it's been really great to educate these folks, and we've reached a lot of landowners around. They've told their neighbors. So Lake Taneycomo, as I was mentioning, is the tailwater of Table Rock Lake. That's the Table Rock Dam in the background. This is our state's largest, most popular trout fishery. As the dam was created in 1959, it changed this. This was already a lake. It had a dam 22 miles down from this one that was built in 1913, and it was for electric hydropower. So this was a warm water lake. People came from everywhere to fish it, but it transferred it to a cold water fishery when they put Table Rock in, because the water that feeds this comes from about 140 feet deep, so ideal conditions for rainbow and brown trout, just over 2,000 acres. And you can see the substrate there. A lot of people fly fish this area. There's not a lot of structure to fish around there. We came in with some ideas and some money to put some structures in. We also contracted with the Tennessee Valley Authority to conduct a 4-bay liquid oxygen diffuser study. What this would do is actually inject liquid oxygen into the penstocks before it comes into the dam. So this would be in Table Rock Lake, injecting oxygen into that water, so the water coming through then is well oxygenated. As you can imagine, 140 foot deep, there's not a lot of oxygen down there, so the water coming into Lake Taneycomo is often lacking, especially in the fall with the lake stratification. So we got that study in our back pocket as options to improve the DO conditions in the tailwater come about. Additionally, we put in those rock boulder clusters for trout habitat. You can see kind of some pictures of them here. We put 71 clusters in, just kind of upstream facing triangles to get flow around them, create some scours behind them on some of this gravel, and create some deeper areas for these trout to hold when they're generating water. And that rainbow trout I had to throw in there because it was a potential new state record. The guy measured it. It was 29 inches long, but he never weighed it. So if you equate out what that would be on the formulas that they have, it would have beat the state record by 3 pounds. But see one of the rock structures in the background, so we were really proud of that picture. So this is just a few more pictures of how we did it. We utilized some low water levels that they had to work on the dam at the bottom end of the lake. So they had drawn the lake down, and we were able to get in there with some machines and put these clusters around where we needed them. And that's just kind of an aerial on the bottom right of what they look like. It's been pretty positive. Anglers have said they've started catching fish off of them. They're finally starting to create some scours. They've been in about 4 years now. So it's just going to take a little more time, I think, to get them what we want them to create those scours like they need. The fourth objective then was to monitor these structures. We did that using 4 methods: electrofishing, scuba surveys. Table Rock Lake's extremely clear because of our rocky shorelines. We were able to get underwater and look at these structures. We also did creel surveys, and we worked with the University of Missouri to do a bass biotelemetry study. We radio tracked some largemouth bass around the lake for a year to see where they were going and what they were using. With the electrofishing, we have a set of coves that we shock since about 2000. We standardized these coves, so we took some as controls and some as experimental coves, and you can see we put habitat structures around the shoreline every 30 meters from 0 to 15 feet deep to fluctuate or to compensate for fluctuating water levels. So we're kind of in the middle of this. This is the only evaluation technique that's not completed. I want to do it for another 5-6 years until we have a good data set following the habitat augmentation to see if we've got any trends heading upward to really congregate these fish. Are we pulling fish into these coves, or are we just congregating the ones in it? More to come on that. But the scuba surveys, we took 50 structures, 10 of each habitat type. We dove these for 2 summers, 3 times per summer, and we took 2 divers. We would descend on the pile, one person sit on each side, and we take a count at 3 minutes and 5 minutes. That way we weren't counting the same fish that were circling the piles all the time. What we found was that bass utilized all the habitat types, but the legal size bass really seemed to prefer the hardwood trees. And as you'd expect, the crappie really seemed to show a preference for cedar trees. They will both use all different types, but except that crappie really didn't prefer rocks for whatever reason. But that could have been because most of the rocks were placed in the main lake where there's not a big crappie population. But, this really helped guide some of our efforts, and perhaps those of others, like you folks in this room, if you're wanting to manage for bass or you're wanting to manage for crappie, there's some things to consider. And we did publish a paper on this. Within that paper is a kind of a spreadsheet of cost per pile of habitat type, so that could be of use as well. We did conduct some angler creel surveys to see if catch rates improved as a result of habitat placement. We divided our historical creel sections in half, really inundated one half of that creel zone with structures and left the other one alone to see if catch rates were going to be better as compared to previous year's data on the areas where we put the habitat. So they were, just by a little bit. And really we also asked some questions. We wanted to know how much anglers supported what we were doing, and we really got a lot of support from anglers. They all loved what we were doing out there. I say all but about 2 people. We also put a web survey up on the web for about a year. We wanted to know, is it improving your fishing success? How much do you support or oppose? We asked anglers, what do they prefer depth-wise, structure type, asked them what they fished for primarily. So used all that information together to determine, okay, bass fishermen prefer this type of structure and this depth of water, and really help guide our efforts in the future as well. The biotelemetry study we conducted with the University of Missouri. We had a graduate student that came down once a month, and he tracked these fish. We implanted transmitters in 70 legal largemouth bass in one of the river arms of the lake, just to kind of determine movement and home range of bass, as well as habitat use of our habitat structures. The movement and home range aspect, we found out largemouth bass really don't move around a lot in these lakes, at least legal size fish. They have a home range, and it's about less than a mile, at least the fish that we've tracked. All these different colors on this map represent different fish throughout the course of a year and where they went to. So they used the habitat structures we put in equally as much as they used the existing cover that was in the lake, which I think is about all you can ask for. We weren't creating anything that was better than what was existing, but they did utilize the structures we had put in, like the natural cover, and that was our objective, is to replenish some of that stuff. Most were located in depths of about 10 to 20 feet, which helped guide our habitat placement the last 3 years of this project. So we kind of knew, all right, these bass are hanging close to these areas, and they're in these depths of water, so we tried to mimic our habitat placement to use some of these results. So finally, to close everything, we wanted to develop a program that could be used by others to use what we've learned maybe on these other lakes and reservoirs around the country. As you all know, our habitat's deteriorating. We did complete our final report, and I'm happy to email this to anybody. I'll put my email up at the end. It's about a 140-page document that covers everything we did from the very conception of this project to the very end. Within that is our published scuba paper, the graduate student's thesis on the biotelemetry, more details on the septic pump out program, and also it's all in there, and I'm happy to share that with anyone who wants to see a copy. Like I mentioned, we published our scuba results. We've got 2 more papers concerning dealing with the movement and home range and the habitat use that are currently being reviewed for publication as well. And we have already taken these ideas that we've learned on this lake to other reservoirs in Missouri. You see the rock barge there making its way around. This is another lake in northern Missouri they did a project on. And then a lake on the right using the habitat barge and some pretty substantial trees. They got loaded up on that. And both these projects were funded from the Reservoir Fisheries Habitat Partnership. So using what we've learned down there to take to other places, and it's been a very positive thing. A lot of partners, like everybody said this morning, project partners are what makes everything work. We couldn't have done it without them. I mean, Corps of Engineers lakes, so everything we did had to be run by them. They were very flexible, very helpful. Anything that we needed, they pretty much gave to us to get this stuff in. Of course, Bass Pro Shops and the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation are big funding partners. And Empire Electric operates the dam on Lake Taneycomo, and Southwest Power Administration operates the hydropower from Table Rock Dam. So everything we did on Taneycomo had to go through these entities as well. So they were very good cooperators. And then all of our great water quality groups down there. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Sport Fish Restoration Act, a lot of my time spent was reimbursed by those dollars. And of course, Johnny Morris with Bass Pro Shops, a huge, huge partner in this. And he's very, very supportive of all of our fisheries activities in the White River Basin. So a big thanks to him. And then our department. And just want to give some credit to Mike Allen. He was our fisheries biologist for the 5 of the 6 years that we did this project. And he was out there every day. In the middle of the winter out there dumping these structures. You've even got some sound. Don't let anyone tell you that bass don't use these structures, because we got some really good video and pictures of some of these things when we were scuba diving on them. We've got a few anglers that said no, bass don't use these things, and that's not true. Everything from young of the year to big legal bass to we had smallmouth, spotted bass, largemouth. Of course, some structures are better than others. Just kind of depends on placement, orientation. But it goes on like this for a little bit. So I'm welcome to answer any questions if we have time. I know it's lunchtime, so. My email address is down there at the bottom. If you want a copy of this report, I'm happy to email it to you. Just shoot me an email or give me a call, and we'll share it with you.